I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung and the Europa to this session, Is AI Becoming the Second Boss? A Worker's Perspective on Algorithmic Management at the Workplace. We would like to thank Hans Böckler Foundation for the opportunity to host this session. And I would already like to welcome our three panelists who we will hear a little bit later. And these panelists are Anne Mollen of AlgorithmWatch in Germany, Andrew Pakes of Prospect, a union in the UK, and Kim van Sparrentak, member of the UN Parliament from the Greens faction. Welcome to you as well. To get us started and to share a bit the motivation for the session, I'd like to welcome Oliver Röthig, the Regional Secretary of Europa. Oliver.
Thank you very much, and also welcome from my side. I'm the Regional Secretary of Europa, the European Services Union. And when we talk about algorithmic management, about AI, that is one of the topics which is really on vogue. But we discuss it more or less as a technical issue or as a consumer issue. What is much less in the discussion is really what happens to the workers. And when we look at algorithmic management, one key point is really surveillance, that the employer is watching you. In some parts of the world, like in the United States of America, that has always been the case. But in Europe, much less so. We have GDPR, and now we also have remote work. And so one of the big questions for the employers is, of course, how can we make sure that the worker actually works? And then we have some examples, not necessarily only in Europe, but one very stark one is from Teleperformance. And most of you probably don't know Teleperformance. That is the biggest customer services center company in the world. And there's an example from Latin America. When you work for them remotely, you basically have to sign a contract which says the camera of your video screen has to be on all the time so that the employer can watch you. And since it is in your home, you have to grant them the right to film your home as well if your children run through the picture. So all very nice, but it means you don't have any privacy. So what we need to do is really bring this workers' discussion to the political field as well. And that means for us at European level into the discussion of European legislation. There our demand is quite clear. Workers' rights must be respected also when you're living in an online economy. And when we talk about respecting that, one key point is workers need to have a voice. And so one of our key points is we are looking for legal obligations for the companies, which is in a set framework for AI that allows workers to negotiate with the companies about the rules that apply to algorithmic management AI. There has to be transparency, there has to be clear information, and there has to be negotiated settlements, collective bargaining agreements for these issues. And that is really what we're looking for. And now I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for giving us some examples already of the problem. And of course, as a regional secretary, you combine those with the political demands. FES and Europa have done a survey because we felt that, yes, algorithmic management is a reality, but how pervasive is it already? And what do workers know about algorithmic management tools at their workplace? And how do they respond? So I'm asking my colleague, Oliver Philipp, and you will be joined by Birte Dedden to briefly present some of the key findings of this survey. Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mirko. Hello. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's with a great pleasure that I and Birte Dedden from Europa are presenting now to you the new FES Europa survey on algorithmic management. It was already said, my name is Oliver Philipp and I'm a policy officer at the Competence Center Future of Work in Brussels. So as we do not have much time, it will be a very brief presentation and we will focus on the main findings and the main recommendations. And the survey is already online, so you can also find it on the website of Europa and FES Future of Work, and it will be also shared later. So no worries about that. So the report summarizes the findings of a survey, and I think we can now have the next slide. Thank you. So this report summarizes the main findings of a survey on the awareness of use of algorithmic management tools at the workplace. And in total, we got nearly 1,400 responses, mainly from the telecommunication and ICT sector. And we did this survey because we started to realize that many workers are unaware of the AM tools used at the workplace. And unfortunately, this assumption got confirmed by the survey. So only 34% of respondents said that such tools are used, mainly rating systems to evaluate the performance or software to track physical and digital work activity. And 1/3 is unaware of such systems. So further findings we got out of the survey, especially out of the open questions, are that there's a high uncertainty and a lack of transparency of the AM tools usage. Unions should get support of technical experts to better understand the system used at the workplace. Workers do expect more information from employers. And the last point is that workers want to negotiate with employers to the application of AM tools. And based on these findings, we formulated a couple of recommendations that now my colleague Birte Dedden from Europa will present to you.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry. And thanks, Oliver. I will very, very quickly, you can show the last slide of our presentation, please. So the recommendation slide. We have just a couple of recommendations that we find are very key. And it sounds very obvious, some of them, but the fact is that not everything is really applied yet. So the number one recommendation is algorithmic management tools really need to be more transparent. So transparency is the key demand, and we need to monitor the effects these tools have on workers that are exposed to them in their daily work. It's very important. It's also important that we deepen the knowledge of trade union representatives about these usages. So there must be a lot more information and training going on so that people really know how these systems work, and what they're used for, what the objectives are, and how they can actually regulate them, if that's possible. We also need to provide more information about the practices of employers. For instance, hiring systems, rating systems, they are not always very visible. So that is important. And it's very, very key to support local trade unions in their efforts to address that issue, to organize around these issues, and to build capacity. So deepening the knowledge, information, and training are the key points we've raised. And that could be done, for instance, by regular but very simple surveys amongst trade union members to identify the specific issues that they feel are relevant for them, so that we don't have a more abstract approach, but we really break down this whole questions to the actual workplace issues. And that is something that needs to be reflected in trade union work plans and activities. So there's a very clear mission, I think, and a very clear role for social partners and trade unions to engage around that issue. And last but not least, and it's not wishful thinking, it's really something we need to put in place. It's employers, companies need to listen to the workers and their requirements. It's not only us as being trade union reps to listen to our membership and to try to put that forward, but really there must be that dialogue. The social dialogue is really the best way to engage in these issues and to drive algorithmic management towards a technology that is beneficial for everybody and where you have a business case for employers of using it because there might be a very good return on the investment on these systems. There must be productivity gains, but this has to be done together. So working together as social partners, addressing these issues is really the key recommendation that has to been confirmed actually in our survey results. And with that, I would like to give the floor back to Mirko. Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot something very important. I'm not giving back the floor to Mirko. Actually, we would like to show you a very quick video, and the video is very nice. It's actually some worker testimonials of affiliates of Europa who have been in their daily work exposed to algorithmic management, and they share their concerns. So here you go.
Soy teleoperadora y desde el inicio de la pandemia trabajo desde casa. Según mi contrato, mi empresa puede instalar en mi domicilio un sistema de videovigilancia para controlar mi trabajo. Considero que ese sistema es demasiado invasivo y ejerce demasiada presión sobre mi trabajo. Considero que hay otras herramientas que pueden perseguir el mismo objetivo sin necesidad de invadir mi espacio personal ni mi intimidad.
Different algorithms and AM is used, for example, in our service units where the work days and work weeks are scheduled by algorithms by predicting the customer flow. Then it can lead to very tight scheduled work days and work weeks, and that is where we union reps can help our employees, and we have done that. We have brought up their worries and problems and given their feedback and got more flexibility on the scheduling their work days and weeks.
So, you're talking about pick by voice, the voice system that turns humans into robots. Well, sadly, that's the reality today. A friendly woman's voice telling you exactly what to do every minute of your working day. Barely any space to make any decisions of your own, just total control. From my experience, I find this system having a negative effect on a person's mental health. People need to have the freedom to take their own decisions, not feel controlled all the time. I've seen people screaming at their earpiece, telling her to shut up. I've met people saying this woman haunts them when they sleep. And I think it would be difficult to forbid the system right now, but we should at least work towards a restriction of how much it should be used per day to minimize the negative effects.
Okay, with these voices from workers, which I think gave us a clear indication of what it means to work under an algorithmic management system, I'm going to open the discussion with our panelists. We have three colleagues from different sectors. Mollen from AlgorithmWatch in Germany, speaking for civil society, and Pakes of Prospect Union in the UK for the trade union. And then we have a political voice from Kim van Sparrentak from the European Parliament. I'm going to start with Mollen. Anne, from your work, which algorithmic management tools do you see are often used, and which of these tools for you pose the greatest risk for workers?
Hi, thank you for the invitation. I just wanted to say in the beginning and for the great input. Well, we see a diversity of tools being used, especially to monitor computer activity, for example, such as keystrokes, or to count messages that employees send, or we see systems in place even before, employment starts, when there are systems scanning CVs and matching them to job offerings. We see automated systems in digital job interviews working with very pseudoscientific concepts behind them. Well, there are so many tracking devices used. There's also facial recognition systems used sometimes. So there are just very, very many tools and devices used. And I think it's important to address this diversity, and also there are a lot of questions to ask, I would say. But I think the greatest risk really is just the lack of voice that employees have in the processes when implementing these systems. So I think it's really, I think we in some sort of way we have to overcome this, or this being scandalized by the diversity of tools and the invasiveness of these tools, but to go a step further now and start addressing, so what is really the risk here? Is it the technology itself, or is it the processes of how these technologies could become implemented? Because I think this is key. The risk is that we have power imbalances already in place between employees and employers, but with ADM systems, we see them getting worse. And we see it's becoming harder and harder for employees to make their voices heard. And I think this is the greatest risk. We need to address that people can articulate their interests, and they actually can implement their interests also in these complex technological systems, so to say.
Yeah, I think that's well understood. I think it goes the same direction as what Oliver said earlier. Maybe to go a little bit deeper, sort of from a human rights perspective, I mean, where do you see a red line that cannot be crossed, by these AM tools?
Well, I think it's important that, first of all, people are aware that they are being used. They need to know that they are being monitored, tracked, they're being subjected to automated decision-making systems, and this is not always the case. And then we, of course, need to have certain safeguards against discrimination in place. I also would be very wary about fully automated decision-making systems without people in the loop, human in the loop system, so to say, especially when it comes to very critical decision-making, such as termination of contracts or anything that relates to an employee's forthcoming. So fully automated decision-making systems are kind of a red flag. Also, any system that could lead to irreversible harms without sufficient safeguards in place, because these systems, they make wrong decisions. And, you can have safeguards in place and reverse these wrong decisions, but sometimes the harm is already done and it can't be reversed. So there need to be sufficient safeguards. Also, facial recognition technology in the workplace is a red flag, I would say, because workers are already being tracked. They have to carry devices on their bodies, and having this sort of facial recognition systems in place, it almost comes close to people not being aware that they're even being tracked, because they're not carrying a device on them. Also, very problematic are, for instance, collection of biometric and health data, for example, through fitness trackers. This is information that employers should not have. And also the pseudoscientific approaches that I mentioned before, where there are systems in place that look at your facial, features, and they're making deductions about your personality. This is often used in job interviews. So this is simply, they are not scientifically sound concepts underlying these systems. But again, I would like to stress it's important to talk about the technology, but it's also important to look at the processes around these technologies.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, for this. I'd like to ask Andrew Pakes now from Prospect. That's a union that maybe not everybody knows. It's from the UK. You have organized 150,000 workers. These are scientists, engineers, tech experts, and other specialists working in many different sectors. Andrew, from your perspective, what are the biggest threats posed by algorithmic management at the workplace?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invite. I think one of the biggest risks is silence, and that we don't talk about technology and work in the same space together. Too much of our debate is around technologies around consumer rights, it's around individual privacy, and we use GDPR a lot. What we don't have is enough work around collective rights and collective differences. So our experience in the United Kingdom absolutely echoes the brilliant work that Birte and others have done and FES with their survey. Not enough people know what technology is being used, how that technology and data is being applied to them. And here's the thing. We talk about technology, we talk about algorithms and black boxes. The reality for us at work is it isn't about the technology, really. It's about management. It's about power. It's about culture. It's about how things are applied. So we need to apply some of those similar disciplines we've done as trade unionists throughout our history into this new world. And one of our challenges is much of our body of protections around workers' rights, around health and safety and others, was based in the old economy, which was around physical harms and risks in workplaces, in factories, when people are working on site. And the challenge now is that so many of these harms are being caused in the cloud, inside algorithms, inside a black box. And I think too many people find that difficult to conceive how you bring those things together. But we are, like our previous speaker, absolutely resolute that if our data can be used in a workspace, it should be accountable to us. And if decisions can be made about us, whether to hire us or fire us, whether to promote us, whether to decide we're a good worker or not, whether it favors men over women, or white workers over black and brown workers, that is a trade union issue. There's a great phrase used in the equality movement which applies here, which is nothing about us without us. This is our work, it's our hopes and dreams, it's our livelihoods, it's our prosperity. So linking those together into the workspace is a really powerful movement that we need to build. And what we've been doing, and welcome to some of our prospect members and our tech sector I can see on this call today, is continue to educate our shop stewards, our members, our representatives. So we're asking those questions. In the UK, we use GDPR, but we get GDPR is not sufficient. So what we want is European colleagues and others to be ensuring that we have digital rights at work from day one, to ensure that employers or bosses are accountable for the use of that technology. In the same way as if there was a physical accident at work, if one of our members tripped over and harmed themselves at work or scalded themselves with hot water or another thing, their employer would be accountable. We need to ensure employers are accountable if that data is used in bad ways. And one of the tools we've done alongside lobbying government and working with brilliant champions like Birte and others speaking today, Kim and Anne, is we've also done training for reps. And in a moment, I will drop it into the box on the side there, which is how do we empower our shop stewards and representatives to be challenging and asking those questions of their employers. And it comes down to that. This is our work. Therefore, we have a right to know how we're being managed and how we're being controlled in that workspace.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you touched already on sort of my follow-up question, that is sort of what do you do, in your union to raise that awareness and to prepare your members to counter these negative effects and to be there in collective negotiations and in other forms to regulate it at the workplace. What do you do maybe differently? Because we kind of see you as one of the trailblazers in this regard. Was it a difficult sell? And how do you get to the members to get this awareness?
Yeah, well, look, the honest answer is we're still very early on our journey. The world of technology is changing how we are managed and controlled so fast that we are playing catch up. And one of my big pleas to the movement, to politicians and others, is that we need to get our act together and get more serious about this. What we know, and this is why it needs international action, which is why it needs the European Union, why it needs politicians across the world to be acting alongside civic society and unions, is this is big technology and it doesn't know or respect national borders. It is technology being developed in one part of the world which is being used to control us. This is the latest development in the line of capitalism and the economy. And we know that every stage, unless workers have organised, unless politicians have acted, then workers have suffered in it. So we're starting to have those conversations with our members. And so for those who can access the chat, I put the guide, the link to it in there. We've broken down into checklists for our reps and members. What questions should you be asking your employer about how your data is used? And we had similar surveys to what Birte talked about earlier around the lack of knowledge. People are not sure what data is being collected or how that is being applied or used in it. We make use of data impact assessments within GDPR. I said they are limited, but they are a right. And we assert our right under GDPR that if our data is being used within that, and it is high risk because it can make decisions about us, we have a legal right, and employers have a legal obligation to consult us, unions as representatives, works councils and others, about the use of surveillance software and others. And trying to look how we bring into, and this is why I think other colleagues on this call will be really important within this, particularly with the EU's moves, and perhaps Kim or others could talk about some of this, like the extension of collective bargaining. We want to take GDPR as the foundation, but really we want data to be part of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining already looks for the social partners at pay, terms and conditions. Data use and algorithms are a condition of work. And if they're a condition of work, we need to take them as part of our everyday bargaining and negotiation with employers at sectoral and enterprise level to ensure that we are having that check and balance in there. So it comes back to that earlier point about there's an imbalance of power in this. So please take a look at the guide we've done. It is not perfect. It is our start. It is our, we are David, and we're taking on Goliath in the way this technology works. But it's our starting point to try and level that playing field so that our members and reps have dignity and respect and security in how technology is helping and changing their working lives.
Yeah, thank you for insisting on data being sort of the new frontier in collective negotiations, and I think that's something where there's a bit of work to do for a lot of the unions, and I think we are certainly grateful for you to having those develop those guides and guiding questions that can help us in our collective negotiations. So thank you, Andrew, and I'd like to turn to Kim. In your work at the European Parliament, of course, you're trying to find sort of political answers, regulatory answers to these challenges and problems that were mentioned. From your own perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenges that need to be addressed?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of the things that have been said by the previous speakers are very clear issues that have to be dealt with. And I think when you look at the way that technology is introduced to workers, it's often introduced as, just an update on Word or an update on Excel. But instead, it's actually, something that surveys you constantly and has very different impact on you than just having to figure out where you can now find the way how to adjust, certain tabs. So I think it's very, very important that we talk more about it and indeed create more awareness, because there is not enough awareness. But in the meantime, of course, we need to start regulating, because we know that as soon as technologies are embedded in our society, it's even harder to regulate them. This is exactly what we're trying to do right now in the EU. And it doesn't make it easier when it's already everywhere. So I think maybe when you really look at the regulatory aspect, I think first we need to break open the black box effect that enlarges the power imbalances between workers and employers. People just need to know what's going on, and also what information they're collecting about them, why, what are the decisions or assignments based on, and do they do even other things with data, like do they resell it afterwards for AI training and getting the double whammy out of it. I think secondly, we really need to empower workers. We have to give them a say on how technology will be used. So indeed, having the collective bargaining strengthened there, and also giving a strong right to appeal decisions and to redress if things go wrong because of technology. And I think thirdly, we need very clear limits. There are certain things that should just never be allowed, not under any circumstances. For example, never being able to be fired by an algorithm, or companies collecting information about people's sexuality or private conversations, their emotions, their health status, or data on them outside of working times. And of course, also not to be biometrically surveyed constantly when they are at work.
Right. I think that's some clear points, but maybe from your work in the European Parliament, you can tell us how far away are we from actually sort of effectively addressing those issues, and where does it happen? What are the instruments that are sort of currently being negotiated?
Yes, so there's two pieces of legislation that are currently being negotiated, and I'm working on both of them. One is the Artificial Intelligence Act, and the other one is the Platform Work Directive. And I think when you look at the Artificial Intelligence Act, it's a really horizontal proposal. It tackles everything related to AI. So what I'm trying to get into the AI Act is to make sure that we can have sector-specific legislation for AI at work on top of the AI Act. So not regulating algorithmic management through the AI Act, but really make sure that it's not embedded in the AI Act, but embedded in labor law and labor rights. Then when we're talking about the Platform Work Directive, this is actually, I think one of the most interesting pieces of work that I'm working on right now when it comes to algorithmic management, because we are actively trying to regulate algorithmic management in this piece of work. It's going to be, I think, a blueprint for the rights of workers when it comes to algorithmic management. And I think it's very interesting to see how these discussions are going right now as well. And how there's still, especially from the council side, still some, constraint to really feel like, we should actually actively regulate algorithmic management and not seeing that as a hampering of innovation or whatever kind of narrative is being used. I think we have to really make the first very big and good step to make sure that we have the algorithmic management chapter in the Platform Work Directive as good as we can get it. And then I think it's important that will set the basis for a separate legislative initiative from the European Commission to really have algorithmic management at work tackled from a European level. And I think that is where we are trying to get everything in. And I think that the Commission really must present a proposal for algorithmic management and monitoring of all workers in all sectors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we do have time for participants here and online to ask questions, to enrich our discussion, address our panelists. So take your time to think of questions, or if you already have one, just raise your hand. We'll give you a microphone. Just tell us briefly who you are and then address the questions. I already have one up here, Justin.
Thank you very much. And it's so it's working?
Yeah. If you want to be seen, you can stand up. So
okay, I can stand up. I stand here.
Yeah.
Kim, it's directly a question directed at you. You mentioned that you're working on the Platform Work Directive, and of course, there's a lot of good stuff in there when we talk about algorithmic management. But it's not only limited to platform workers or like workers employed via digital labor platforms. I don't know the exact terminology. Is it not an idea, instead of fighting for like a new proposal after that looks at the entire labor market, to kind of expand the scope, to fight for expanding the scope of the Platform Work Directive, and just to get it out of the way? Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. That's also one of the ideas that I have proposed. In the end, I'm not the boss, and there's other parties as well in the European Parliament, and there's also the Council and the Commission, and it seems that they are not too keen, unfortunately. Also, I don't think it would be a pity, of course, because it will take longer if we need a new legislative proposal. However, I think also it will give us more time to really make sure we tackle everything. If we don't have the Platform Work Directive and the algorithmic management part there just broadened. But of course, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that it is as broad as possible, and to make sure that it might be applicable to all workers. There's also already some countries that have showed interest in the algorithmic management part of the Platform Work Directive, and see if they could sort of already start doing something with that on a national level to see what the effects would be, and also to see what we're missing out on, for example. So there's a lot of things happening, and yes, we should be as fast as possible. So I'll try to fight still to have the scope broadened of the Platform Work Directive, but so far there's just a few other parties that are not too excited about that.
All right, thank you very much and good luck.
So my name is Isabel Lippert, and my dissertation is about algorithmic management and the implications for workers, managers, and organizations. So I'm particularly focusing on the traditional organizations. So in the first step, I did interviews with Lieferando drivers, as they can be seen as kind of a hybrid organization in Germany because they are platform-like but have a fixed contract. But it's more interesting for me to see how algorithmic management is being used in those traditional organizations like automotive or banks or something like that. And are there also first projects regarding traditional organizations? That would be my first question. And the second question is if there are also some projects regarding the occupational well-being of workers, because this is one of my questions. So how do they feel? Do they have more resources, or do they have more demands in terms of their occupational well-being? So are their physical and their cognitive needs really met in this case of algorithmic management? So are there any projects in this regard?
So I guess it's a question that can be answered
Yes,
by
for
any of the panelists. Who would want to address those?
I could
Anna, please.
answer. So we are starting to work on a project with a Swiss union and trying to also establish, in practice, education training courses for employee representatives to be able to accompany the process when ADM systems become implemented. To have the ability to ask the right questions. And this, of course, also includes the many diverse interests that employees can have. And of course, this includes mental health and well-being, because we've seen in the video before that there's a lot of pressure on employees through the constant tracking and through the constant reminder that they are being tracked as well. It's not only opacity of, am I being tracked, but also the constant reminder that is extremely stressful. And I think, again, it's important to have employees being able to accompany the process of these systems being implemented, and not only have, risk mitigation and, solutions once the harm has been done, but to really have them involved in the whole process. So this is just one project that we're involved in, and I know that there are more projects that's in that kind of regard.
Yes, maybe I can just hop on, and I just would like to second what Anna just said. There are a lot of projects already out there. I'm not even sure that I know about all those projects, but what we've been doing at European level is really to push for the awareness raising, because the first step is to make people understand what's going on. And in the second step, actually, we would like to see more such projects as Anne just mentioned, or the very, very good work that Andrew has pushed for in the UK, that these kind of things would be used as an inspiration, and that national organizations, national civil society organizations, but especially trade unions, would really try to design their own project, because they know the landscape best. They know the legal landscape in their country best, and also at company level, best when you're an employee what is really necessary. So we are here actually to facilitate that input, to facilitate the awareness raising and the trainings, but then it really is an issue for national trade union organizations to push for that, and also to make lobbying to raise awareness also in the public debate on algorithmic management. And that's where Kim comes in at European level, but this has to be transposed at all the national levels across the EU. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I'm very happy to hear that there are a lot of actually PhD theses written at the moment around algorithmic management. So it's good to see that this is also an academic debate, but we need to push really for breaking it down to the workplace level. And this is where things really have to happen. So there is a lot of stuff going on, but we are just in the first stages, let's say.
Can I just add very briefly? I think we need to be really careful about happiness software that's coming in. We need to challenge it on all levels, because there's always another side to it. You saw this with any HR software or digital, and you saw this with Office 365 when they introduced their productivity score. It was given to us as individual workers to say, look, you spend all of this time in meetings and emails, think about your well-being. What they didn't tell you on day one was your manager also got that and could see how hard you were working. So I'd be careful of the happiness software. It is snake oil. This is about outsourcing human management. And HR is something that needs to be transparent, not done in the machine.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one question from the chat, or maybe two. So Oliver, please ask those questions that have been put forward to us.
Yes, I'm happy to do so. So we have, I will read one question from the chat. So the question is, many European companies use AI and AI-fueled platforms in recruitment process. Should we push for an accreditation at the EU level for these tools to make sure that only those which are in line with labor and union rights standards will be used?
Okay, so an accreditation, a kind of a standard for those algorithmic management systems for the hiring.
Shall I
Please
answer this question? Yes. So one of the things that we are trying to make sure that will be in the AI Act is that when algorithmic tools and AI tools are being used, that when it comes to the work sphere, they will be classified as high risk. Since the AI Act has a risk-based approach, this would mean that they have to comply to the standards of the Artificial Intelligence Act, which means there shouldn't be any bias in the system, that they have to have the proper standards, that they are not allowed to discriminate. And basically, they sort of have to go through an accreditation system, you could call it that. So that's why I think this would actually be tackled in the AI Act, and we really have to make sure that the things that are happening on the work floor will be part of this high risk category, basically. Yeah.
Okay, but still the saying goes that even if there are certain standards or accreditation system, we still need to be on the negotiating table to when those instruments are being brought into the workplace. I think that's a consensus
Definitely.
that is emerging, I think, among the speakers, and also the people nodding around here. If there are no further questions, I think I've done a good job in keeping the discussion brief and to the point, and within the time limit that have been imposed to us by the organizers. So I'm about to close the session, but not before thanking you, Anne, Andrew, and Kim, for sharing your insights with us. And of course, I can say that there's a commitment both by FES and Uni Europa to continue working on those issues, to provide guidance and provide political clout to the negotiations taking place at the European level, but I think also the policy processes that are going on in the respective capitals within and outside the European Union, Andrew. So thank you and have a pleasant afternoon. And for those here, wish you a good next session. Thank you.